Carlos was a seasoned taxi driver with over 15 years of experience navigating the streets of his city. He had heard it all: dramatic confessions, awkward silences, and even bizarre stories that seemed too wild to be true. But on one seemingly ordinary night, Carlos encountered something that defied logic. A story that felt straight out of a movie script. It was midnight, and Carlos was parked at a quiet spot downtown. The streets were deserted, and the cold night air tempted him to end his shift early. As he adjusted the radio dial, he noticed a figure slowly approaching along the sidewalk. The man was impeccably dressed in a black suit and carried a briefcase, his elegant appearance starkly contrasting with the empty, casual surroundings. Carlos rolled down his window. "Need a ride?" he asked with his usual friendly tone. The man nodded silently and got into the car. There was something unsettling about him, a mix of calmness and mystery that immediately captured Carlos's attention. "Where to?" Carlos asked, adjusting the rearview mirror to get a better look at his passenger. The man gave an address that Carlos didn't recognize, which was rare for someone who knew the city like the back of his hand. "Is it far?" he pressed, trying to make conversation. The man gave a faint smile. "Don't worry. You'll know when we get there." Carlos felt a chill run down his spine but didn't let it show. For the first few minutes, the silence in the taxi was almost oppressive. He decided to break it with a casual question. "What do you do for work?" The man chuckled softly but gave a vague response. "You wouldn't believe me if I told you." Carlos laughed, hoping to lighten the mood. "Try me. I've heard all sorts of things in this taxi." The man looked out the window and replied, "Let's just say my work involves traveling." The answer was as intriguing as it was insufficient. Before Carlos could press further, the man began speaking on his own. He shared stories of journeys to remote places, encounters with historical figures, and adventures that defied all logic. Carlos listened, fascinated yet skeptical. "And all of this actually happened to you?" he asked. The man turned slightly toward him, his gaze intense. "Sometimes reality is stranger than fiction. You want to know where this story is going, don't you? Then before we continue, if you want to help our channel keep bringing amazing stories, give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. If you enjoyed it, turn on notifications to find out when new videos are posted. As they drove further, Carlos noticed the streets becoming less familiar. The buildings and landmarks he knew vanished, replaced by open spaces and an eerie silence. The GPS on his dashboard no longer recognized the address. "I think we're off the grid," Carlos remarked, trying to sound casual. "Are we close?" The man pointed ahead and said calmly, "We're almost there. Turn right at the next street." Carlos obeyed, turning onto a completely deserted road. There were no lights, no houses, nothing but the sound of the car tires on the asphalt. "Are you sure this is the place?" he asked, bringing the car to a stop. The passenger picked up his briefcase and opened the door. Before stepping out, he looked at Carlos with a mixture of serenity and mystery. "Yes, this is exactly the place." He left the exact fare on the dashboard and disappeared into the darkness. Carlos waited for a few minutes, scanning the area, but there was no sign of him. No doors, no paths, no logical place he could have gone. Feeling unsettled, Carlos drove away, but the image of the man lingered in his mind all night. The next day, curiosity got the better of him. Carlos returned to the location in daylight. The area looked even stranger in the light of day, completely lifeless. After some searching, he noticed a rusted plaque hidden beneath overgrown vegetation. It bore the name of an old building that seemed abandoned for decades. Driven by a mix of curiosity and unease, Carlos entered the building. The lobby was covered in dust, with old furniture scattered about as if it had been left in a hurry. Among the yellowed papers on the floor, he found a black and white photograph. The man in the suit was there, surrounded by other people. What made Carlos's heart race was the date in the corner of the photo, 1954. Carlos couldn't comprehend what he was seeing. How could the man he drove the night before appear in such an old photo and look exactly the same? He took the photograph to a friend who was a journalist and had access to historical archives. After hours of research, his friend uncovered information about the building. It had been a meeting point for a secret society in the 1950s. The man in the photo was a key figure in the organization but had mysteriously disappeared and was never seen again. Carlos tried to resume his routine, but he couldn't stop thinking about what had happened. Every time he got behind the wheel, he replayed the conversation with the mysterious passenger, wondering if he had imagined it all. Then, on a rainy night, something happened that made him question everything. While driving through the same area where he had dropped the man off, Carlos saw a familiar figure on the sidewalk. It was him. The same suit, the same briefcase, the same enigmatic expression. The man raised his hand, just as he had the first time. Carlos pulled over, but when he looked again, the man was gone. From that night on, Carlos never saw the man again. But the encounter left a lasting mark on him. He began paying closer attention to every passenger, wondering about the stories they carried. And when his friends asked about the mysterious man, he would simply say with a smile, "It felt like something out of a movie, but I lived it." Want to know more about this story and many others we still have to share? Then don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Every day, a new story comes straight from our mysterious archive, filled with tales and accounts we've gathered from various sources. Cases with stories that will give you chills. Also, don't forget to share this video with that friend of yours who loves a good mystery.